So now at this point, we'll just let you listen as we listen for the last minute and a half's worth of communications
90
between
seconds and counting.
the 7 Atlantis astronauts and the people on the ground.
Sound suppression water system has been armed. 3 main engines reported ready for ignition. Final check now of the solid rocket booster commanding. "45 seconds and counting. 45 seconds to launch."
ET helium inject, Delta P number 2.
Standing by for the handoff.
For LTC ETO3. We're go. Copy.
And the handoff has occurred. Ground launch sequencer has handed off to Atlantis' onboard computers. 25 seconds.
You do? Yes, sir. Attention, we're going to continue.
Sound suppression water system is activated. 15 seconds and counting.
10 seconds.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7. Main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis to assemble the framework for the science laboratories of tomorrow.
Houston now controlling.
Houston Atlantis, roll program.
Miles.
Houston, Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Copy, Houston, go at throttle up.
1 minute, 10 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid-fueled engines are back at full throttle. At liftoff, the fully fueled shuttle boosters and external tank weighed 4.5 million pounds. It now has burned half that liftoff weight in propellant. One minute, 30 seconds. All hydraulic systems in good shape. The electricity producing fuel cells also in excellent shape as Atlantis heads downrange, 18 miles from the Kennedy Space Center at an altitude of 18 miles. The next event is burnout and separation of the twin solid rocket boosters, which are burning propellant at a rate of 11,000 pounds per second. SRB separation is confirmed 2 minutes, 15 seconds into the flight. Atlantis is traveling 3,000 miles per hour, downrange from the Kennedy Space Center 46 miles, altitude 35 miles. Ignition of the twin orbital maneuvering system engines on the tail of the orbiter, providing an additional boost toward ascent and heading off toward the International Space Station. Two minutes, 45 seconds into the
Sam,
flight.
in a moment, we're going to hear the different decisions being made about whether or not they would have to abort and to where they would go if they have to abort in terms
Atlantis,
of returning to site.
2-engine TOW.
Okay, 2-engine TOW means.
Okay, transatlantic abort. So at this point, if they lost one main
Atlantis
engine,
can reach
they could
Zaragoza in
they could
Spain
go
in the
to
event of a
Zaragoza,
single engine failure.
Spain.
However, all 3 engines are continuing to perform as expected. Hydraulic system's in excellent shape, as are the fuel cells producing the electricity for
Now,
the
for
vehicle.
about the next 40
3
seconds,
minutes,
they
20
could still
seconds
come
into
back
the
here to
flight.
Kennedy
Atlantis is
Space Center,
97
declare a
miles
return to
downrange
launch
of an
site
altitude
if
of
that
51
became
miles per
necessary.
hour.
But once they reach a little more than 3,800 miles per hour, they
The
can't do it.
5,300 miles an hour, and then
5,300
at that
miles,
point, no, they're no longer capable of coming back.
Very quiet here in Mission Control. as
Those
the flight control
calculations
team
depend
continues
on
to watch over all
distance
systems
and
everything,
velocity,
continuing
what?
to
That's
go
right.
very
They're looking at a
smoothly
downrange
with Atlantis'
distance and
voyage
also
to
the
the International
velocity at the
Space
point
Station.
that they reach that downrange distance. And of course, those are going to be a variable. We know where that is
minutes,
roughly,
50
but
seconds into
again,
the
it's going to be a
flight.
variable depending on the performance of the boosters, the performance of the main engines for the atmospheric condition of the day.
Atlantis, negative return.
Now there's your negative return call. So at this point, if they had to do an abort, they would go to a
Atlantis can
transatlantic
no longer
abort
return to
site,
the
or
Kennedy
more
Space Center in the
preferably,
event of an
they
engine
would abort to
failure. All
orbit, which
three
is
are
a much
continuing
more
to perform well,
stable
as are the
abort mode.
hydraulic systems
And that
the
did happen on one
electricity
mission.
producing fuel
They
cells.
could get into orbit.
4 minutes,
They had
20
a sensor telling them of a problem in one of the main engines. if I
Right, and
remember
main engine
correctly.
cutoff sensor, they actually,
altitude of 62 miles,
the,
now
they
traveling
had 2 failed
8,000 miles
sensors.
per hour.
So once they had 2 invalid sensors, the engine shut itself down premature, well, as a precautionary measure. Now, what we changed after that flight was that if you had one of those sensors fail, we inhibit the shutdown.
That OMS assist should wrap up in the next 15 seconds or so.
Okay, we're going to replay the launch because there are a few sites more spectacular. The only thing I can tell you is that you've got the best seat in the house. That camera is about 150 yards from the launch pad.
Lee Archambault
Watch that.
in the forward right seat, Pat Forster, the flight engineer between them. Steve Swanson serving as mission specialist number
I've got to tell you, as Sam and I were watching, and Sam has flown it 3 times and seen it countless others, he was watching it as if it was the first time. Look at that.
No, I
There's
just-
not a better shot.
There's not a better shot, and I'm telling you, I just never tire. You can see the shock waves on the main engines there. Now it's in the roll program, which is going to put it in the trajectory necessary to catch the International Space Station. The flames coming out of the back end of that space shuttle today as it lifted off the pad were over 600 feet long. So again, if there's any question about whether or not that's a safe place to be, let me answer it for you right now. It is not.
And the temperatures inside the engines while it's lifting off, 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Now look at that.
minutes,
Here's another angle.
into the flight.
We're
Space
looking
Shuttle
right down the
Atlantis.
flame trench there. That's the hydrogen or the oxygen and hydrogen exhaust there. Pure water vapor, solid rocket booster exhausting on the other side. And again, there we are now. Clear the tower. Now Mission Control Center would take over control of the vehicle.
Are you aware of all that smoke, all of which you know is going to happen, but when you're looking out the window?
Okay, there was a single engine Zaragoza call, and we're now doing 9,700 miles an hour, in excess of 9,700 miles an
But
hour.
single engine Zaragoza being one of the 3 backup landing positions on the eastern side of the Atlantic. 2 are in Spain, 1's in France. And that means when they say single engine Zaragoza.
Right. Now, at that point, a single engine will get them to
It'll
that
get them.
site. Now, one of the things that you have to accomplish during that time as well is now you have to use your reaction control system thrusters to provide additional steering authority because it can't steer it single engine. It depends on both the main engines. And again, so you also would use the reaction control system engines to provide additional steering commands to the spacecraft.
Is equal to that of drain.
In only about a minute,
25 seconds.
we're going to see that remarkable shot that's only been around for 3 or 4 missions, a camera that is actually attached to the external fuel tank and will disintegrate as the external fuel tank falls back toward Earth. But that camera will show us the separation of the shuttle. You'll see the bottom, the belly, the thermal tiles of the shuttle and the external fuel tank, and it's one more shot of the launch. This one from the vehicle assembly building. That shot is taken from about 3 miles away.
That's a magnificent shot there. And we're 7 minutes and 34 seconds now into the ascent. They're increasing speed at the rate of about 1,000 feet per second every 10 seconds.
Expedition 15 crew.
In about a minute, they're going to be going 8 times as fast as a rifle bullet. How do you like that one?
That's right.
8 times as fast as a rifle bullet. To what degree do you sense your speed during ascent?
Well, during ascent, you're as a matter of fact, they're going to 3G limiting right now. They're at 3Gs. They're just about. Let me stop here for a minute because They're going to be,
Okay,
uh,
the orbiter
there
as
it
it
is.
approaches
Now,
loads
this is a
near
live
3
shot
times gravity.
from
We're standing by
a
for the
camera
main
on the
engine
external
cutoff
fuel tank at the bottom of
confirmation
your
from the
screen.
booster officer here in Mission
And
Control.
that's the belly of the shuttle, and you can see the attachments, and separation's coming in. Just wait a few seconds. Those brackets will blow off, and you will see what appears to be the shuttle rising, but in fact that's not what's happening because it's on a fairly fast and straight trajectory. Rather, the camera, which is on the external
Main
fuel
engine
tank,
cutoff confirmed, 8 minutes 35 seconds
okay, main
into the
engine
flight.
cutoff confirmed. No more thrust, and it takes about 20 seconds, and they separate.
what's going to happen is we're going to fire a number of thrusters here that's going to pitch the orbiter up away from the spacecraft. So we are firing thrusters to pitch it up, and now we're going to fire some
Separation of
additional
the fuel
thrusters
tank has also
to
been
translate
confirmed.
away
Crew
from the
handheld
external tank
photography
to give it
setup
proper
will
clearance.
be underway shortly with a
I was
plus
mistaken.
X
It is in
maneuver
fact a
that's
shuttle
managed by the
rising from the
commander on
external
board,
fuel
Rick
tank. Look, there's
Sturko.
the tail end
Yeah, and,
of the space
and
shuttle.
we are now on orbit.
Traveling how fast?
25,800
falling away. You
feet
can
per
see the
second,
thruster
or
jets firing as the orbiter is being maneuvered
17,604
for the,
miles an hour.
Handheld photography.
Atlantis, Houston.
still
we show a nominal MECO.
Hard to believe. I talked earlier about the metal tag that rides right now at 17,500 miles per hour in the
Mission
mid-deck of
specialist
Space
Pat
Shuttle
Forrester will be
Atlantis
using a
that
still
rode at
camera with a 400mm
the
lens
speed
on it.
of a
Danny
sailing
Olivas
vessel
will be
400
using
years
a
ago toward
mini
Jamestown,
DV
Virginia.
camera,
Just
taking
look at that
of the
video there,
external
Greg.
tank
It's,
as,
again,
it
it's
falls away
breathtakingly
from,
beautiful.
Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Words can't
9
describe
minutes,
it.
45 seconds into the flight, Atlantis now in orbit.
And while we were watching that, we were also feeling it.
Very
Absolutely.
We were feeling the shock waves, and we're about 3 miles away. And of course, by the time they reached us, they'd come from even further.
So this was a perfect viewing site for this launch because of the trajectory. When it rolled over for its orbital insertion trajectory, we were looking right down the tailpipe.